Good afternoon. My name is Michael Cerutti, and today we're going to be talking about my journey, what I consider to be an expedition to advanced analytics with relation to the near completion of my master's in applied data science at Syracuse University. So we are going to walk through an About Me section, just talk through who am I. We're going to go through my journey in terms of the curriculum, and then I've got some closing remarks related to this. So about me. Personally, my name is Michael Cerutti. I was born and raised in Massachusetts. I'm 42 years old. I've got two daughters, age 14 and 19, and the main reason I was able to join this program was because my daughters were at an age where they didn't want to hang out anymore and play every day. So I had a number of years. I had my oldest daughter basically right when I graduated undergraduate, and as a result I didn't have the opportunity to go right to a master's program. When they were young children, it would have been really impossible to handle the curriculum as well as a full-time job. So I was able to start this program when my daughters were old enough. In terms of work experience, I've been working at Fidelity Investments for close to 2 decades now. My role has morphed from doing operations and database administration and a lot of technical type roles in learning database management and such, to doing key performance indicator reporting and visualization and management dashboards and understanding, again, how our key indicators work and how that trickles down from the management KPIs, and how to build out key performance indicators that are granular enough so the frontline folks can understand how they can move the needle on some of those. And that's continued to work into, to continue to morph into analytic type roles where I managed an analytics team that was primarily focused on descriptive and exploratory analytics. This really started to incite my passion in terms of advanced analytics. On a business trip in the mid-2000s, I bought the book Super Crunchers by Ian Ayres, and within that book is where my passion continued to grow in terms of moving from descriptive and exploratory analytics, what happened in the past, providing insights to management on what happened in the past so they can react and make changes so that they can move forward and be green in the future, quote unquote. The idea of getting predictive and prescriptive with that has always been exciting to me, but the concept, I couldn't really grasp how to roll it out, how to implement it. This book by Ian Ayres really got my passion going in terms of the fact that they're using analytic models to decide if a convicted felon should be released or not, based on a lot of analytics about their history and in terms of whether or not there's a predictability, a likelihood that they could commit a crime once paroled from prison. The idea that just from a movie title they can predict whether or not that movie is going to be a hit or not. So models of that nature started to excite me. Then I started reading about some of the things IBM was doing in terms of Deep Blue and Gary Kasparov and being able to beat a chess master using analytics. And, the fact that it went through multiple iterations where it lost in I think it was 1996. 4 games to 1, and then in 1997, as the computing power moved up, I think it was on 100x in terms of the amount of computing power they were able to handle at that point. It beat Gary Kasparov in that tournament. So I think you can start to see how computing power and the ability to have more data integrated into these models was going to be extremely impactful. That morphed into the work that was done there on Watson in winning Jeopardy. So now you're getting into text mining, natural language processing type of analytics, and being able to beat Jeopardy using Watson. You could just see the metamorphosis of analytics just through those 2 projects that IBM spearheaded. So my passion continued to grow in that space, and that's where we are today in terms of me wanting to be a part of this program. In terms of my journey, again, this what I just talked through is really what's articulated on this slide. What I believed when I wrote this letter of intent is that the Syracuse Master's Program will position me to advance my career to a level of analytic acumen that will instill confidence and position the company for future data-driven decision making. Again, I have what I'd consider to be achieved a pretty reputable career doing descriptive and exploratory analytics, doing visualizations, dashboard design through multiple software packages, and data engineering, data manipulation. I've been very, very sought after within my company for a lot of that work. I really felt that to take it to the next level and be able to move into the space of big data, to get into text mining, natural language processing, predictive and prescriptive analytics, machine learning, artificial intelligence type modeling, I needed not to sort of learn this stuff on my own like I had done for the last 18 years in doing self-paced learning. I needed a reputable education to do that, and that's really what I felt this program was going to offer me. And after nearly completing the program, I am extremely confident that that is exactly what I needed. When I began the curriculum, my company was very much undertaking, and my group was very much supporting what we called a revitalization of our call center. We were doing contact optimization on a lot of different projects. We had a very archaic system in place whereby we routed our calls that came in purely based on the client that the call was from. So we had these client-centric teams, and you basically had a group of people, and the size of the number of people answering phone calls for that client depended on how large the client was. So you had to staff to those levels at the client-specific teams. The contact optimization work was to start to do what we call skill-based routing, and start to say, okay, if you get a call in, we need to understand what that call is related to before we route that to a person. We need to understand how difficult that call might be, and then we need to route it accordingly to a person with that skill set. If it's a simple call, we should route it to somebody who can take simple calls only. And if it's a more complex call, let's route it to a more experienced representative who can handle more difficult calls. This was huge, but they were not using a lot of data at first. My team really jumped in and did a lot of this work, and one of the projects we worked on was a repeat caller analytics. And what we did is we built out the additional logic to our call records to identify if a call was a repeat call or a call as a result of a prior call, so a repeat or a sort of a repeat causing call. And then we could start to look at the representatives out there that were causing repeat calls. So you have these one and done calls whereby someone will call and they'll never call us again for years. And that means that they're either self-servicing their need or they have low service needs in terms of contacting us. You have others who are contacting us over and over again, and it could be either because we're providing incorrect information, because they really don't know how to self-service the answer that's out there potentially on our websites, or the representative who is receiving the call is ultimately leaving them short of the full answer, and they're having to call back again. So a lot of the analytics we did here was to try to understand, can we reduce repeat calls, can we identify repeat calls, and maybe our routing strategy should change based on who gets the call, who receives the call for a repeat call. And then a lot of the work was to start to feed a system so that as soon as a person called us up, we knew who that person was. We had a good prediction as to what they're calling related to based on either past call history, based on prior work items that we have in the system, or based on their web activity when they called in. And then we could ultimately start to really have a good profile on a person prior to them calling, or right at the time of a call, so that we could route the call appropriately. So instead of having somebody call and using our voice system and ask them the question, hello, what are you calling about today? We can ultimately start to be predictive and prescriptive and say, hi John, are you calling to take out a loan today? So that we're using some of that predictive analytics to sort of steer the conversation a little bit. and again, it's a work in progress, but the analytics that we've done on the back end to try to understand the complexity of a call versus a simple call based on the different attributes of a person and personalization. It's all been really full circle, and the curriculum I got out of this program has definitely helped to enhance that analytics that we're doing. A second project that I worked on and was actually in flight at the start of the program was a project called the Optimal Health Lineup, in terms of the funds that are being offered within a 401k plan. And there's a lot of different methods out there to identify whether or not a plan has an optimal plan lineup to ensure that their participants or their employees can retire on time and comfortably. But there was never anything that pulled together the efficiency of the lineup, the performance of that lineup, as well as the outcomes of the participants, to really come up with what we call an overall health score. So I helped to build that, but what I didn't do when I was building that entire logic and database was to really build out a sufficient ETL, or really a conceptual model related to how all the moving pieces worked. So with this IST 659 data admin and concepts and database management class was help me apply the learnings in terms of building a conceptual model up to a physical model, and integrate that into the coursework, and then ultimately roll that out to my company in terms of being able to have this be a repeatable process that we can produce and provide an optimal plan lineup within all of our plans that we administer. As we started to move into the curriculum, I started to encounter, obviously, software that I had not been privy to as much. I had a very small working knowledge of R, mainly in the Johns Hopkins program that I took, the data science certificate through Johns Hopkins. There was some R work, but Python was something that I had never really had exposure to. In our IST 652 scripting for data analytics class, I really got my first foray into Python, and I'm extremely impressed with its capabilities. The project that I worked on there, which I thought was amazing, was to look at our lending tree information. So this was off of Kaggle, I think, and understand if we could predict with a high likelihood what the interest rate is, and whether or not somebody looking for a loan would get approved or not. But to predict that interest rate, ran a couple different models, a neural network model, a random forest model, and a linear regression model. And through all three of those, I was able to really utilize the RMSE, the MAE, the MAPE, and understand which model was the most accurate in terms of predicting that interest rate. And then obviously the other factor there that was very influential in this class and understanding is the fact that just because you have one model that might be most accurate, it also might be the most complex to integrate into the environment due to multiple factors, whether it's system limitations and stuff. And even though a linear regression model might be not quite as accurate as a neural network model, the opportunity to get something in place and rolled out using a linear regression model might be much quicker than using what could be just a couple clicks more accurate, like a neural network model. So I think in the case of this one here, it was understanding the complexity of each of these models and how to integrate them. But I think Python was great in terms of being able to provide that output. And then, rounding out the curriculum was getting into our text mining and natural language process. So these were electives within the course, but the classes themselves were extremely impactful. Like I mentioned, I built a model using some what I call brute force methodology in the past, where I did what I consider to be sediment analysis on our live chat channel. So we have, through our website, a contact us live chat section, and a representative will live chat with a participant and answer questions. So we have the transcripts of all those interactions, and I ran a brute force sediment analysis on that prior to taking any of this coursework, which ultimately just took a list of 4,000 negative sentiment words and bumped them up against the words within the transcript and counted the number of negative sentiment words. And then I assessed what I consider to be positive or negative sentiment based on the number of negative or positive sentiment words, or the percentage of the transcript that was made up of negative or positive words out of those 4,000. So a very brute force, hard-coded method for coming up with sentiment. But the approaches that I learned in this class, in terms of using natural language processing and text mining, part of speech tagging, lemmatization, vectorization, regular expressions, context-free grammar, and parsing, using all those methods really took all that sort of brute force methodology and took it to the next level, that I could start to apply this to similar type work. We now finally have in our company the transcripts from the phone calls as well. And using that data, we can start to do some very interesting work around things like real-time nudging, if the call is going off the tracks. Or if there's any, today we have a process where our teams ultimately cherry pick items to do random sampling of quality of these calls. And how great would it be, instead of just cherry picking these calls, that in the morning when the QC team comes into the office, they can have the list of calls that they should basically identify, that have been identified at high risk or low quality, that they can analyze and then take corrective action, instead of pure random sampling, cherry picking. So again, a lot of the work that was done within the text mining and natural language processing classes are going to be extremely impactful for my company. And then in conclusion, what happened with my team is that I was leading an analytics team doing descriptive and exploratory analytics, and my team was merged with 9 other analytics teams. At that time, I moved to an individual contributor role, and that's right when I started this curriculum. But one of our sister teams of the 9 is a data science team with a number of accomplished data scientists. And what I did when I joined this program is I let them know that I was part of this program. I wanted to partner and assist on data science advanced analytic projects that they were working through. And ultimately, as the program progressed, I would be gaining that experience on projects along with the actual formal curriculum within this program. That has ultimately played out exactly as I wanted it to. I have been partnering with that team for months now. I am part of many impactful programs, one of which is working with our quality control team and predicting losses related to what we call money out work items. And the application of predictive analytics within quality control is really difficult to find in the industry. So I think we're somewhat cutting edge in that space. But I played a huge role in the data engineering, the model building, the implementation of this project so that we could move this into production. The convincing of our operations teams to rely on an analytics deep learning model to predict whether or not an item should be quality controlled and looked at, versus their very hard-coded target and random sampling rules that they had in the past. That is a huge hurdle, but I think we were able to build a model that is accurate enough that has given them confidence to implement that. So that's a huge project right now that has gotten a lot of publicity, and I was right center of working on that as a result of the work that I got out of this program, as well as the opportunity that my company has given me to partner and help out with that project. So I really owe it to this program for that, and I really thank you for the time, and look forward to my future in advanced analytics and having this degree under my belt to ultimately have a lot more confidence in doing this type of work in the future and rolling it out sufficiently. Thank you.